Hello everyone, welcome back to my little studio. It's only 2 weeks away until the new year and I'm just starting to get into kind of a wind down mode. I've got my trusty sketchbook here and I'm going to walk you through a couple ideas that I'm using right now pretty much every day, every other day to keep that creative flow going and also just get that brush mileage in, which is super important. So I'm totally off script today and we're just going to chat. I hope you enjoy it and that it inspires you. Okay, we're getting cozy. I've got my Christmas lights and my candle going, and I'm gonna just look at my sketchbook while we have a little chat. So, cue the painting. One of my biggest struggles that I run into when I have a bit of extra time to paint, but it's not for a tutorial, it's not out of necessity, it's just for myself. I constantly get decision paralysis. By now, I have thousands of photos and videos that I've taken since I moved to Scotland many years ago that I could paint from, and when I look through them, I'm instantly transported back to these places that were so magical. And I think, oh wow, that one would be an amazing painting. Ooh, this would be an incredible painting. And within, 5 minutes of scrolling through my images, I am so overwhelmed and just, I get this anxiety almost about where do I even start? Which one do I choose? And I can talk myself out of even starting just by spending time scrolling through my images because I'm like, oh, maybe if I scroll a little bit more, one will really jump out at me and that will be the one that I want to paint. If any of this sounds familiar, we need to just like hold hands, remind each other that it will be okay. I think that's actually why I love painting from life, going outside and painting. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but one especially is because the inspiration is right in front of me. None of this happens when I'm outside. I look up and I am inspired and I paint. It's that simple. When I'm in the studio, there's a lot of things. There's distractions of home life as well, but I just get that decision fatigue really quickly, can easily talk myself out of it. So one of my biggest tips for anyone who goes through this is to have a collection of photos or images that you've taken or other people have taken, just a handful of images that really inspire you. And maybe it's for different reasons. Maybe it's the light, maybe it's the color, maybe it's the theme of the image. And that you can organize them with different themes if you want, like maybe have a snow pile and a forest pile or something like that, but print them out. I usually print mine anywhere from 1 inch by 1 inch up to like 4 by 6 inches, because that's usually like 4 by 6, 5 by 7 is usually the biggest size I'm painting in my sketchbook. So yeah, have them printed out. Have a little envelope somewhere or even like a big jar or something because it's kind of fun when you can just stick your hand into a jar and pick one out at random. But usually I just have a little envelope nearby or a box. I have a couple different piles of photos around the office. And the second I feel that decision fatigue coming on, I stop what I'm doing and I go to my pile of photos and I pick some out. I don't know where this comes from, but so often I will pick out an image from my pile and I'll be like, ugh, why did that one make it into the pile? And like, what was I thinking? Why is that inspiring? It's like, I'll look at it suddenly as this like mundane image when I know at some point it inspired me a lot, and that's why I even printed it in the first place. So I have to get over that. And then it becomes a challenge. It becomes a whole new challenge of how do I take this really maybe it's not mundane, maybe it's just my mindset in that moment, but how do I take this image and create an interesting painting from it? And it really quickly becomes, or it gets away from just copying a photo to actively thinking about what makes an interesting painting. And I get to use the design side of my brain and the composition side and the creative side. And yeah, literally invent or create an interesting painting from that inspiration. And I find that over the years of doing this, it has been one of the biggest reasons that I'm now able to just invent paintings out of my head, because I have all this, well, I have this library, this visual library in my head now that I can pull from. And sometimes I take multiple images in my head and I put them together on the canvas as the painting. But you can do that with physical photos. So I learned in the last couple of years that not everyone is able to visualize something in their mind, which that's so interesting because I've always been able to. And I'm not saying that to brag or anything. It's just humans are different. We all have a different perspective and a different mind that sees things differently, interprets things differently, and we aren't all able to do the same things in our minds. So if you are unable to actually visualize things in your head, having an image is extremely important, or having your reference in front of you, whether it's an image or your outside painting. And what you can do is put that image in front of you, and you can start by taking little steps. So you can crop the image into maybe one little spot that's kind of cool. You can replace specific colors in the image with something else. Like if the image has a lot of black, dull shadows, you can say, okay, anywhere in this image that there's a dark shadow, I'm going to use ultramarine or cobalt blue or something like that. And then your darkest part of your image stays blue, or you could even use purple or pink or something fun. And that instantly makes it interesting, or at least kind of helps you tap into that creative side of your mind. And just by doing this over and over, one little thing in each painting, just change one thing. Maybe you move a tree, maybe you remove a tree altogether. Just by changing one little thing each time, you're building on that skill to invent and create, and you become the architect of your painting, really. Using these little images in front of you, or like even cutting them out and rearranging them in different ways, could help you do that. The other great thing about this strategy is I have all these small images and I'm going to paint them relatively small. So I can work through quite a few images, quite a few ideas and themes in a relatively short amount of time without devoting hours to one single painting. And even though you do learn a lot by doing that, it is also very valuable to paint a lot. And I know for myself, when I paint a bigger piece, that one single painting will exhaust me and I'll have to stop for the day after a few hours. Whereas if I paint 5 different tiny scenes, I can think about snow, I can think about forests, I can think about rivers and mountains and all these different aspects. And I do get exhausted by the end of it, but it just helps me stretch my mind a little bit more within the same amount of time of doing a big painting. When you have 2 gouache pages side by side, when you close the book, they can rub together and the paint can kind of get messed up a little bit. What I tend to do now is put a piece of tracing paper in between the page, and that means the paint isn't going to rub as much. It kind of protects it without needing to varnish it. I used to varnish my pages when I was done with them, using the cold wax mostly, but even that can rub and get a little bit messy when I'm using the sketchbook. So I take my sketchbooks outside with me. I throw them in my bag. They get messed up. They get tossed around. I don't want to say that I abuse them, but maybe I kind of do. And I just found that doing the varnish just wasn't enough. So while I'm using the sketchbook, I use tracing paper, and I'll usually just cut it down to the size I need. I have quite a few in here. And that protects it enough while I'm using it. And then when I'm done with the sketchbook, I will varnish it, either with the spray varnish or the cold wax. I kind of prefer the cold wax because it's absolutely waterproof. Because these are just going to sit vertical, like slid into my shelf with my other sketchbooks. There's no worry about them getting like pressed and rubbed together that much. So yeah, that's my strategy. It's also a really fun exercise for practicing using a giant brush in a small space. And this is something that I learned from Nathan Fowkes many, many years ago. I took one of his little online classes. He has a bunch of them, but this one was, I'll find the name of the class and I'll put it on the screen. But he suggested using a 1-inch brush and painting like this big, like 1 inch by 2 inch. And I was like, no way, what? It is so challenging, and actually it gets a bit frustrating at times, and I'm so close to just giving up and getting a smaller brush. But the whole point of it is to stop yourself from obsessing with the details from the very beginning of the painting. And I know we talk about this all the time, but it's very helpful to block in your bigger shapes and look at the bigger picture before you go into the details. And especially with gouache, because we are usually painting from the background forward, and there is no point of getting into the details before you have that background fully fleshed out, or even the midground. So this big brush strategy is great for that. The other thing you get out of that is you learn how to use your brush very creatively, and this is something he emphasized. Like, it's much easier to paint a whole painting with one brush than to have a bunch of different brushes that you constantly have to switch between for different like little things in the painting, like thinking about, oh, I have a leaf brush, oh, I have a grass brush, I have a water brush, all these things. What if you just had one brush and you could do it all with that one brush? The whole process becomes a bit more intuitive, and you don't have to stop and break that flow. And it's a very fluid way of working throughout the painting. I mean, this is for studies, obviously. When you're doing a big commission where you do actually have to focus on lots of little details, it is very useful to have like specific brushes for things. But yeah, one of the things he emphasized is big brush, tiny painting. And let me tell you, that is one of the single reasons that I learned how to use my brushes inside and out and in very creative ways. Getting this big brush, this big flat brush, to make giant marks as well as medium marks and tiny marks, as well as soft brush strokes and hard brush strokes and fluffy and rough and all of these different things. You twist it and you turn it and you kind of learn how to use it creatively. And it is a very valuable skill. So there's so many benefits to doing this one little exercise. There's probably things I'm not even thinking of in the moment. Just give it a try. And I hope that it gets you excited and to paint. And if again you're like me and you'll just talk yourself out of painting because you don't know what to paint, or you have so many ideas that you don't even know where to start, this removes that, and it kind of puts you more into like homework mode. Even though I'm having fun, I know I want to paint because I want to grow my skills as well. So having the decision made for me, there's just a bunch of photos and I just have to pick one at random, and then that's the thing I'm painting. It just makes it a lot easier. The other really fun thing that I've been doing lately is to ask people to send me an image to paint. And again, this goes back to the decision fatigue, or just kind of, this is great, especially if you kind of always fall back on painting the same thing, like, oh, I'm going to paint a seascape again, or oh, I'm going to paint a forest again. Like, I kind of do get stuck painting the same things all the time if I'm not careful. I really want to expand my skills and my creative horizon. So if I ask someone to send me a photo, I have no idea what it's going to be. The only thing I usually say is not people or animals, because I'm just not in that realm right now. I'm really, really focused on painting landscapes. So yeah, they send me this image of a house or a tree or a field, and there's all different times of day and all different weather conditions and seasons, and it is sometimes people send me images that I think are really boring and I'm like, oh, okay, how am I going to make that an interesting painting? So what I did recently is I asked my Instagram, I was like, hey, send me an image, I'll pick a few at random and I'll paint them. And I had a lot of responses, so I just randomly picked 4. And these are the 4 that I came up with. There's quite a good variety. We have snow, we have lily pads, we have waterfalls, and we have architecture. And the images that they send me sometimes are a bit too zoomed out, especially because I'm painting them at like 1 inch by 2 or 3 inches or something. So I do crop in a little of from the photo they send me. But it is such a fun creative challenge. And just to give you an idea, like when I first saw the snow photo, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't the typical like sun coming from behind the trees, like rays of sun piercing through the trees, or like beautiful light falling on the snow with long cool shadows. Like it was a dusk image, or maybe just before sunrise, where the light is kind of illuminating, the sun is illuminating the sky and there's lots of beautiful color, but the land itself is still very dark. And I was like, uh-oh, how am I gonna do that? So it was immediately like, okay, detective mode, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna make this work? And I found it to be such a fun break from my usual way of painting snow, or at least what I would normally choose to paint as a reference. So thank you for sending me that one, Ranjana. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And then we have Erica sending me this beautiful lily pad image, which I think I was also a bit intimidated by, just because there were so many lily pads. Like when I go out to paint lily pads at my local garden, I'm usually like, oh, I'll pick 1 or 2, or maybe just the lily or something. So good choice, good challenge. And then FRZ in cold, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that again, sent me this gorgeous waterfall scene, which it was a lot of green. And I was like, okay, there's a lot going on. How am I going to make this an interesting painting when I only have like 2 or 3 inches? So I zoomed way in and I picked kind of a more dynamic spot in the painting, or at least one that I liked, especially because to me it's about the waterfall. It's not necessarily about all that green up above. So I zoomed in and I had a lot of fun with this one. I was taking liberty with colors as well, but I had a lot of fun with the dry brush of the water falling down. I love painting waterfalls. So thank you for that. And lastly, Kromava sent me this gorgeous old architecture. I'm not sure what city it is. It could easily be somewhere in Scotland. But because, again, I only had a little space to work in, I decided to zoom right into that architecture with the old street lamp there. Although I think this would be a fun challenge for a bigger painting, because I do like the giant tree kind of folding over everything. But yeah, I zoomed in. I had to really simplify my brushstrokes and my colors a lot, which was an amazing challenge. But this is great practice for, like, if I'm going to do a cityscape if I'm more zoomed out and I have a lot of buildings to put in there, I don't want to belabor every single building. So painting architecture very small is something I actually want to practice. So thank you for that. And again, all of these were great challenges, and it's stuff I would never have picked out these images to paint myself. So again, it's a great way to get out of your head, stop worrying about what you're going to paint, and just paint. And you can ask your friends, your family to just text you a photo, or I guess you could even flip through a magazine, but it's just that taking away the guesswork and the option of just, keep scrolling to look for reference, keep finding something new and better, and, just sit down and paint. That's the moral of this story. My final step was to add the printouts of the original inspiration because I did obviously take some artistic liberties. I kind of love this peekaboo effect that I have with this. So I hope this video gave you some good inspiration, just a couple of ideas that you can use to get that brush mileage. And if you have any ideas for people that you want to share in the comments below, I know that a lot of my viewers read the comments for ideas, so please feel free to share your favorite way to encourage yourself to get that brush mileage, use your sketchbook. I think a lot of us can use the inspiration right now. Maybe you're watching this during a beautiful summer day and it's not time to paint. You just got to go outside, get that inspiration from life. But for right now, since it's cold and dark and winter, I'm painting in the studio. So I'm going to continue sharing some ideas in the coming months, and hopefully we'll keep each other inspired, keep painting. So thank you again for joining me, and I hope you stay inspired to paint, and I'll see you next time.
Go